Okay, so back on the second show of the Independent Doctors of Pahrump. I'm Dr. Michael Reiner. My partner in this endeavor, Dr. Saverin, could not be here tonight. So I'm going to be running the show by myself. So I want to make sure you guys out there in the viewing audience know the call-in number. It should be on your screen. If not, it's 727-8750, and I certainly welcome your calls. Tonight, I really thought I would start talking about some medical subjects that I find quite interesting, and one of them is obesity. And if I had to have a topic or a title, I would call it the skinny on weight loss. And as you know, like everybody, we just seem to get heavier and heavier and heavier, except for those few people that can eat whatever they want and never seem to gain any particular weight at all. And for those people, they seem to be very, very lucky. But eventually, time and gravity does catch up to them also. And what it really boils down to, there are a lot of diets, there are a lot of fad diets, there are a lot of things that, people hear. But, diets are kind of like a four-letter word. They're out there, everybody knows them. And I find diets very restrictive. And what I try and educate my patients on are eating correctly and choosing and making the right choices when they do eat. And one of those choices I find is what I call a low amylose diet. And amylose is a very compacted starch. You find it in, believe it or not, all vegetables below the ground. So one of the things I tell my patients is when they're struggling with their weight and they don't know why they're not losing weight, we take a brief dietary history. And I start talking to them about trying to stay away from vegetables below the ground. That's carrots and potatoes and radishes and beets and anything that's a root vegetable. And amylose, because it's so compacted, it is actually digested by the amylase, which is in your saliva. And so imagine that you ate a carrot. It tastes a little sweet, but by the time it hits your stomach, it's pure sugar. It's been digested by the amylase in your saliva. And so basically what that means is your digest, you might as well take in a teaspoon of sugar. And if you are ingesting pure sugar, you expect to gain weight. And there's a complex mechanism that takes place when you ingest root vegetables. And that is, it sends an incredible signal to your pancreas to make a lot of insulin. And when you're making insulin, in that quantity, if you can make insulin, if you're not a diabetic, what happens is you overwhelm the fat cells of your body. And when you overwhelm the fat cells of your body to take in all of the sugar you've just digested or ingested, they can't possibly process all of that. And they start to secrete free fatty acids. And the example I use is, let's suppose you are in the Hotel of the Bellagio. Now, most people have been to that fancy hotel, and they have those circular doors that you go in through the front. Well, those are actually what I describe as the insulin transport pumps. They are actually and the people that come into the Bellagio are basically the sugar molecules. So when insulin is present, those revolving doors start to spin very quickly. And as they start to spin very quickly, they push all the people from outside of the hotel into the lobby. Well, guess what? The lobby gets crowded. The fire marshal shows up and says, oh, you got to leave. But you can't go through the door that you just came in, so the people have to exit out the back door. Now, as the sugar molecules are secreted from the fat cell, they are not sugar anymore. They are basically We have a caller, and I'm going to just finish this in just a second. We'll take that caller. They are secreted as free fatty acids. And when the liver sees free fatty acids, it says, we must be starving. And it does not store glycogen, which is what your liver does to help keep you from getting hungry before the next meal. So after this whole battle is over with, just from eating root vegetables and high-starch diet, you basically have engorged your fat cells, your liver has become engorged with fat, and you're hungry. So let me take the call now. It's Valerie. Valerie.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Valerie.
Yeah, Valerie, is this Dr. Reiner?
Is this Dr. Reiner? Yes, this is Dr. Reiner.
Yeah, this is Valerie, your patient.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and, I was using that for Tandem, and it did seem to help me with the MS. However, with the hypoglycemic, I woke up today really shaking, and I thought that I was going to end up in the hospital again. And I know that I needed to eat something like sugar or something. And I want to know, how can I avoid doing that?
How can you avoid hypoglycemia?
Yeah, what can I do besides, I'm constantly eating, but I still woke up with shaking and everything.
Okay. Well, without knowing exactly every bit of information, hypoglycemia obviously is a condition of low blood sugar. And there are several causes from that. One could be the medication that you might be on if you're on it. The other one would be diabetic situation where you actually are taking insulin and that drives your blood sugar down, or diabetic medication that also drives your blood sugar down. And in that case, then we need to reduce those medications if that happens to be the case. Let's suppose you're not a diabetic and you basically are still having hypoglycemia. That situation is because you're probably slightly overweight or pre-diabetic, and your body is making a lot of insulin to try and counterbalance your elevated blood sugars. And when you're not eating, your blood sugar drops low because your body, the insulin is unopposed, and therefore you get hungry, you get lightheaded, you get weak, and you start eating. Well, what do? You eat sugar. Your body craves what it wants, and you sometimes put in your mouth what you need. So that forces your sugar to go way high, and then the insulin gets secreted. Guess what? It gets taken out of your system, the sugar does, and your sugar goes way back down. So you're constantly riding this cycle. So one of the things it's a very long and tedious process, but weight loss is the key. High protein-based foods are the key, and eating frequent small meals. Protein is not really, as long as there's no kidney failure, protein is not a high caloric-based food. Your body spends a lot of energy to digest protein, and protein is not easily converted to sugar. It takes fat, and that in lies the Atkins diet. Dr. Atkins was a famous endocrinologist, and that's how he designed that particular diet. He saw all of his diabetics become wasting away, and what that mechanism is that you basically ingest fat, and your body has to break down your muscle mass to make sugar. And your brain is obviously it's a very vital organ, but it needs sugar to run. It cannot run on protein. So as you're breaking down all of your muscle to use fat, that's when you use your fat. So there's the Atkins diet in a nutshell. And since then, there's been a lot of other diets that have come out. The one I subscribe to, if I had to say one, is the South Beach diet. If you really want to find a diet, or the Mediterranean diets, those are the two diets that if you really want to find a diet. But the idea is to eat vegetables above the ground. Vegetables above the ground don't have the carbohydrate load that vegetables below the ground do. And the other thing we try and tell patients to do is to stay away from, obviously, breads and and pasta, things that are rapidly digested sugars, also rise your insulin, they rise your blood sugar, and they don't allow you to store anything between meals. So I kind of joke, you go to a restaurant, they serve you bread, and then they serve you a dessert, which is your meal, because they've risen your blood sugar, and your dessert that you want is just capping off the top of a rather expensive meal. So you get a dessert in between on both sides of, you get a meal on both sides of your dessert. And we find that the other thing that I have come to lately, there's been a lot of talk about non-GMO based foods. And you'll start to see this in the store, and you're looking, if you read labels. And non-GMO stands for non-genetically modified organism. And genetically modified food substances are things that basically have been genetically engineered to increase our food supply. These are not healthy substances, and one of the big ones is high fructose corn syrup, and you'll hear a lot about it, and it actually seems to trick the mind and trick the body, so you're not ingesting, you don't think you're ingesting a lot of sugar, but in fact you really are. And if you can shop and start to buy non-GMO based foods, and I'll give you an example of a GMO based food, the potatoes that are used in French fries, except places like In-N-Out or where they actually cook the potatoes right there when you see them, they're actually potatoes, you know, if you cut them and ship them frozen, they turn black. So what they do is they flash fry them, and then they ship them. They are actually carved up from 5-pound potatoes that are grown up in Idaho. 5-pound potatoes. Now, you and I both know that if you're growing potatoes, normally you don't grow a 5-pound potato. So that's a genetically engineered potato. And then when you're eating your French fries at McDonald's, not only are you eating the fat, you're eating this genetically modified potato, which is dangerous, and they've linked it to cancers, they've linked it to other diseases. So that's something you'll be seeing, and I think in Europe you can't buy GMO-based foods, only in America. I think we have Tony on the phone. Tony?
Yes.
How can I help you today?
I'm doing all right. I am a diabetic, and I've had this weird craving for jalapeno peppers, and I don't understand why I've suddenly developed this craving, and it don't make sense to me because I really don't care for them.
It's probably good that you do, Tony. Jalapeno peppers are really one of those natural substances that raises your core body temperature and actually helps you lose weight. So one of the things that like eating salsa that has, you know, a lot of tomatoes and a lot of hot spices actually will raise your core body temperature and actually help you lose weight. Now, I don't know if it's related to that, but certainly if you're a diabetic and non-insulin dependent, then losing weight would be a key to helping control your diabetes, and I would encourage you to eat the jalapenos as long as it didn't upset your digestive tract. That's what they do to me. But anyway, I'm not the patient today. So let's get back to, we're going to get ready to go on break, and when I come back, I want to discuss a little bit more about weight loss, and again, I want to discuss a little bit about caloric intakes and how it's simple math to lose the weight. And again, there's a movie out there that I recommend to my patients to see. It's called Food.Incorporated, Food.inc. You need to watch that movie. And I believe we're going to break. Is that correct? Yes? No? Okay.
30 seconds.